Hey everybody, it's Matt and Dan from the Dan and Matt Show, aka Today New Brunswick, Tomorrow the World. Really glad you could join us. Really hopeful that the season isn't affecting you overly such. Moving as we are into the winter-ish kind of time of the year. I don't know about Dan, but I had occasion twice within the past 2 weeks to actually bust out a snow shovel. And while snow, great snow is a bit of a drag when you got like your 6 hours of daylight and you're starting to get into the minuses more than you are the pluses, I think I can fairly say. And so, goodness gracious me, am I happy to be here talking about some of our favorite current tunes. Is that what we're up to here, Dan? Correct me if I'm wrong, because Dan does actually decide the topics of the show. So.
Well, I was just I figured the top is sort of what's getting you through these weird times between just like the general, like you said, the season that's one of those ones that, you know, if you're one of those people that's affected by the season, it's kind of the season that you end up getting affected by most of the time, you know, in most cases. And, you know, just a lot of big, weird, kind of scary shit happening all around the world. And, you know, just like, what's the music that has been getting you through that? Or in my case, I picked a couple of new albums that I like, a couple older albums I've been revisiting, and actually a music-related movie that I watched that I quite enjoyed that was like a nice little surprise to me. So yeah, that's kind of how I took it. But
so, well, in turbulent times such as these, right? I recorded 2 episodes of the music or the education podcast in advance of this, just to kind of get a couple of us kind of under us, and then so we can step away from it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
God help me, I actually mentioned, you want to talk about seasonally affected, I could say, how about electionally affected?
Oh, good God. Yeah, that was just one of those, like, dare I even say it? You know, it's kind of just the literal elephant in the room, I guess, like, in everything these days. But yeah, that was just... Whoo, boy.
It's like he's not even pretending to be a normal person. He's like, I'm a shitbag and you don't got a better choice.
Exactly.
And, wow. Just gosh, some epically bad decision by our neighbors to the south, quite frankly. I had actually been thinking that I was going to my finances, renew my passport real quick, go down to the States to see, you know, the War on Christmas, the annual Lawrence Arms kind of shindig. And then I thought, gosh, maybe I'm just going to back this all up.
Yeah.
I'm in touch with the Lawrence Arms, like, you know, Instagram.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. It could be Brendan Kell, for all I know, you know, it could actually be the guitar player or something. But I'm like, you know, what if you guys just live stream? I'll send you $500 and you just set up an iPhone right next to the stage and gave me an authentically bad streaming recording of your 2-day concert, your 2-night concert. And they actually were like, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know if that means anything. But it's like, yeah. I'm not too eager to get the fastest plane that I can into Trump land for some reason. Go figure, right? Go figure.
My girlfriend was. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, my girlfriend was actually just in the U.S. Was in the U.S. literally the weekend before the election. Because she flew down to Boston to see Gogo Bordello and the Dresden Dolls do sort of like a double reunion show at a place called the Roadrunner there. And yeah, it was just kind of like everybody's just like, I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen. Let's just hang out and watch our, you know, like cabaret rock. Like, but yeah, it's anyways, yeah, that's it's something.
Decline of Western civilization. It's not just a film from the 80s. Okay, that's what we're learning from this. Well, in that spirit, my friend, I am interested to hear then what you are listening to in such times as these. And I mean, as always, right? So,
Yeah.
what do you got for your first pick on this, my friend?
Okay, my first pick on this one, I'll go with one of the newer albums I've been listening to, and that is Cool World, the new album from Kansas's Chat Pile. And yeah, I've talked about them on the show before. Their last album, God's Country, which I think was out last year. That was one I quite enjoyed last year as well, and it was like, they're very much drawing from like the Jesus Lizard, Big Black, like Scratch Acid, like that kind of like Unsane kind of sound. And the first album, God's Country, was pretty heavy into that. They even used like triggered electronic drums on some of the songs to kind of have that Big Black feel almost.
Nice.
And yeah, the new album, Cool World, is just like, it's one of my favorite heavy records of just like probably 2024. Like, I'm saying it, like, it's only been out for like a couple of weeks maybe, but like, it's just like, they're one of these bands that like, it's not just, I find, you can get heavy bands with like crazy screamy vocalists that all very much, it's like they've learned to scream from YouTube tutorials, and like the heavy is like pretty like standard sort of like metal riffs. And with these guys, it's just like detuned, distorted bass over almost like shoegaze guitars and just like heavy, almost industrial drums. And the singer kind of going from like a mumble to a shout to like this like kind of like almost like, dirgy melodic moaning to like, yeah, like it's good. They go from like Jesus Lizard to like Jawbox to Corn, and like No Means No, at all points in between, like I've heard people make that comparison with the new band, or with this new album. I've also, a friend of mine sort of jokingly referred to it as their goth album, just because they are working a little more kind of like I'd say like some melody, but like melody loosely, as in it's not just someone shouting about like, why are people sleeping on the streets over like, this like pounding industrial drum beat, like there is like a semblance of a tune somewhere in there. Yeah, exactly. And like they're expanding it in like good ways. That's not just like, hey, we're going commercial. It's just like, hey, look, we're learning to write other songs than just these like, these first kind of songs we learned how to write, but still keeping it in the same sound.
A couple yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, and just like very like, and they're fucking heavy too. That's the thing. Like on top of all that, it's like they're just one of the heaviest bands I've heard in a while. Even if it's like, yeah, like the guitars on this album definitely have a lot more kind of almost like shoegaze influence at times. And yeah, there's one of the singles that came out of the song Mask. The chorus just reminds me of like if you played a Jawbox record that was supposed to be played at 45 on 33, like, like, yeah. And they're just like one of these, and you see videos of them. There's just these kind of like rumpled looking like hipster dudes from like fucking Kansas wearing like, cut off sweatpants on stage playing this like infernal sludgy music. Like they're just one of like the most fun kind of like young heavy bands out there right now that like I'm really digging. And yeah, this new album, Cool World, is
checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like, I went to see a movie last night, and was like the whole time on the bus downtown, I realized I was kind of headbanging listening to the album, just like, old man sitting by himself, just like. But yeah, no, it's
worse things that an old man on a bus could be doing.
Exactly.
I've seen it, and some of it's disgusting. Yeah. So don't being completely disgusting on the bus on the way to the movie.
Anyways, but yeah, so that was my first pick, was Cool World by Chat Pile, which is just like one of the newer albums that I've just really been enjoying lately.
That's cool. Now, and again, how many records do these folks even have out prior to this?
This is their second full length. This is their second full length, and they've got a couple EPs as well. And I think they did like the soundtrack to a friend of theirs like independent horror movie or something like that.
Nice.
You know, like,
So
but yeah,
they really are some younger dudes out of the
Yeah.
gate, kind of making a way.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and just like, but yeah, like they're really, they're just like, and they're one of these bands that, like, they're good at the internet too. Like they've got a really like entertaining like social media presence. Like they, I don't know, when they first came out, the tweet that always goes around about them is they said something, you know, in our hometown there's two kind of people. There's stomp clap megachurch preachers and folks who regularly drive their cars into the side of other people's houses, and like that just describes the side, you know, the band in a T. But yeah, so yeah, Chat Pile, that's my Cool World, that's my first pick that's sort of been getting me through, you know, these times recently that I've been enjoying a lot.
Right. Well, may you live in interesting times, as the proverb goes. That's the Chinese proverb, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We are definitely seeing that. That's awesome, man. I guess where I would sort of put out my kind of first pick for this show is I've really Hot Water Music had a new record come out earlier this year, and it's good. Like, it's really good. It's their record Vows that came out earlier. You know, it was like March, I think, and they've been touring. You know, they've been doing Europe. They're going to Australia and New Zealand next year with this record, and particularly coming just a year after their really excellent record, Feel the Void. Well, even more is going down in Hot Water Music. You know, their orbit, in as much as just the past couple of weeks, about 3 or 4 days before the election, the U.S. election last week, they split it's two single, but they each got 2 songs. So they each cover one of the other band's singles, an original song, each of them. And I can't stop listening to it. Where I almost wish that this is what was on Vows, because the stuff on Vows is more eclectic and kind of wider ranging and opening up feature singers and all this, which is awesome. They're certainly entitled to that. But this single, it's just this split. It's all 4 songs are just relentless. It's absolutely awesome. It's with Chuck Reagan singing on their cover of Quicksand's Phaser record.
Nice.
Off of their Slip, the 1993 fucking brilliant goddamn classic.
I love Quicksand so much.
Right. And I didn't even realize how awesome they were until, you know, I've been listening to them. I was familiar with that record kind of. Then I knew then I realized they were going on tour with Hot Water Music and that they're still touring the place with them. And I don't know, they've just been kind of more prominent. They kind of went on a bit of a hiatus for some amount of years before kind of reactivating for reunion shows, which now, just over the past year and a half, have actually turned into like a full-on, you know, touring entity again.
Nice.
And so the songs the second song on this track is them covering Hot Water Music's Radio Free Gainesville, which is like an awesome choice for a song because it's pretty early in the Hot Water Music catalog, and they just do such a cool take on it. You can't really, you know, it's like 50-year-old men or 52-year-old men just knocking it out of the park. And again, like with Chuck's, with Hot Water's version of that song, that Easter song, again, it's just, you can tell that they've been trying to just lean into the metal aspect of it, right? Just the hard groove, the chugging fucking riffs, the breakdown. I mean, it's stuff that you wouldn't necessarily see as being directly with the metal aspect of it. You wouldn't necessarily see it as in naturally within Hot Water's kind of wheelhouse, which is more just sort of pop punk and kind of with alternative and kind of hard rock oriented stuff. And then you got the original song, and they're both good. Quicksand has a really super rad song on it called Super Collider, which is actually the name of I decided that's the title for one of the education episodes, the podcast
cool.
episodes that we just did. We're going to call it about education and initiatives. So with the Quicksand song, Super Collider, and hence the GIF in my background, the CERN, right? The animated thing, Super Collider. That's a Super Collider GIF named after the Super Collider song by Quicksand. And the last track that's on it is this absolutely perfect. I get concerned. I get concerned sometimes because Chris Wallard, doesn't tour with Hot Water. I mean, he's all over the band. He does all this stuff. But I'm like, is he taking a secondary role because this Cresswell dude is singing the songs that he normally sings in a live act and whatnot? But this is just a straight up, intense, fucked up, fraught, emotionally resonant Chris Waller banger. And I mean, I've been quoting lyrics from this song to my girlfriend. I'm just like, the unrelenting undertow, it's just, so I really haven't been listening to much since, the 3 days after this came out. I'll have like Radio Free Gainesville by Quicksand on repeat, right? Like 10, 15 times. Then, I'll get through and then I get to the Wallard song at the end 15, 20, 25 more times. It's one of those. And so you're talking about stuff that lands for you. He's kind of talking about, I've listened to the shit out of this. And again, with no disrespect to the Vows record, the Hot Water record that came out earlier this year, I've listened to this a cajillion times more already, right? Just because it's 4 friggin' heavy, tight songs by 2 bands that are well practiced, touring together, and just firing on all cylinders. So that's on Cool Vision Records. And boy, oh boy, that's really been seeing me through times such as these, Dad. And I guess I'm now wondering what your second pick would be, my friend.
Well, for my second pick, I guess I'll talk about one of the older records that I've been listening to a lot lately, or kind of been revisiting a fair bit. And just because it's a band that will be touring with Quicksand next year. And Quicksand are featured in sort of one of the auxiliary it's a related album or a related project, I guess you could say, and that is Refused. Specifically their third album, The Shape of Punk to Come, which
nice. Good call.
Just like they're one of those bands that like it's funny because like the fact that this was kind of the note they went out on in a lot of ways, like was just this total like maximalist, like we're going to be like, it's like, what if like Rage Against the Machine were into Gita Bor instead of Che Guevara, like kind of like pop metal, fucking post-hardcore, like electronica, like like just Ornette Coleman referencing, like just just very ambitious project, shall we say, and just like it's a favorite of mine. And like they literally broke up 72 hours before I was supposed to see them live. And that's one of those kind of like shake my fist in the air moments that I've had. But the album just sort of celebrated its 26th birthday recently, and Epitaph Records ended up releasing a tribute album to it called Shape of Punk to Come Obliterated. That's got it's got like some newer bands, like including bands we talked about on the show, like Gel and Zulu. As well as like Quicksand and like some industrial band I'm not familiar with called like HO9909. And just like a bunch of different artists all do like just like covering the album. And it's kind of just like, hey, it's their friends doing okay versions that aren't as good as the originals, but still it's, kind of like a cool little interesting like piece of ephemera attached to it. But just like I've been revisiting the album and it's like it still fucking goes, like it's still like a great heavy catchy album. And it's like I said, it's like Swedish straight edge kids really into like the writings of the Situationist International. And like referencing like 60s avant-garde free jazz in like the album title and like artwork and stuff. And like throwing in like drum and bass breakdowns and shit, like like they really kind of went for it. But like they were like it's a great fucking album. It's funny.
As it were.
Yeah. And next year, or I guess that's not the It's Funny part, but yeah. Next year they're going to be doing their final tour ever with Quicksand. Or their final North American shows ever, apparently. The Refused Are Fucking Dead tour.
Fantastic.
Just because I guess they'd started doing a reunion, and then their singer kind of ran into some health concerns and realized, just kind of, you're of a certain age, you can only go so hard and so far so often, and sometimes your body says no fucking thank you. So they're just kind of going for one last tour next year. And there's a Toronto date. I was eyeballing it. I think there's a Vancouver date too. But well, yeah, with them and Quicksand. But anyways, yeah. So Refused, Shave a Punk to Come. I've just been, revisiting one of the classics, I guess you could say.
Man, that is cool. And when you talk about the Shape of Punk to Come Obliterated, that actually makes me think weirdly of Charlie XCX and the Lime, or the fucking Brat record.
Oh,
and,
that one. Yeah,
it's like Brat, it's the same as Brat, except it's completely different, or some shit is in the title. It's not a remix record, but it's like the same songs interpreted Chris Stapleton or Zach Bryan or some shit. All these diverse artists.
Oh, yeah.
Blown up, revisiting, as it were, a modern classic of sorts. So, again, cool on the contemporary tip there as well.
Yeah.
Actually.
I was not expecting you to reference Brat, but I'm into it.
I wasn't either. And yet, there we go. It's been like
I was actually listening. I ended up listening to one of the songs from that version of that album last night, just because Jen had some friends over and they're having some beverages and putting on music. And one of the things they put on was the version of the song "Guess" with Billie Eilish. That it was just like a bunch of 40-year-olds sitting around having drinks, yep.
Billy has a new record out. I mean, we could go full on,
We can have a pop. We can have a poptimism episode sometime. That's something we should do.
You're in charge of the topics, man. I'm here to tell
let's do it. Okay, poptimism episode on the docket for the future.
Good call.
All right.
Put it in your spreadsheet. Put it in your Outlook, friends.
Yeah.
So, with that very lime green diversion, I guess the next thing that I would say that I've really been listening to, I guess I'm gonna do my first sort of put two of them into one. And I spoke about this in the notes for the last show, but I didn't actually speak about it during the show. I fucking love Jesse Malin so much. Since I discovered his record New York Before the War, like I was aware of him before, but I went to Backstreet in St. John, and I even talked about him, in episodes of this show at least a couple times, a year plus ago at this point, and he's just off the basis of that record and some other things that I kind of tracked down of his online. I just became such an immediate fan of both the songwriting, particularly, but then the delivery. 50-year-old punk guy from New York who writes songs. I actually told John Bowie, who's like one of my best friends, he is my best friend. I told him straight up, like, this guy is at the level of Paul Wester in terms of songwriting ability. And I don't even put that lightly, in that sort of like just the alternative anymore, but certainly not mainstream, kind of just Keith Richards oriented fucking guitar rock. He's pulling it out, and he's got such brilliant, thoughtful observations and lyrics. So it was really, I guess, disheartening about 6 or 7 months ago when you hear that, okay, the dude's visiting Argentina on a tour or something, and he has a stroke. He had a fucking stroke.
Oh, no.
In Argentina, of all goddamn places.
Yeah.
Where he does, again, Americans decided that they don't need public health care. Americans decided that, okay, we're going to just elect Republicans who are just going to eviscerate the shit out of public health care. So when like the American people that I know are like, well, got to pay for health insurance, or well, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? On the one hand, but then like, goddamn, that's a drag. But what subsequently happened is he spent, Jesse, he spent like 6 months, 7 months, like just in the country, not able to leave until he was medically stable and through it. He's back in New York City where he belongs, thank God. But as well, there's been this tribute album that's come out that's actually put out by the Sweet Relief Foundation, right? So you go back to Victoria's Sweet and the Sweet Relief Comp from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Victoria Williams being a very significant sort of folk indie kind of singer. I don't know if it was multiple sclerosis or what that caught up with her. It was some kind of neurological function where she needed immediate medical support. And so through music, through a tribute where various awesome artists were covering her songs, that became something that sort of transcended that individual artist and that individual initiative. So now the fact that this organization that they need, right? I guess that's kind of their niche. There's just this absolutely fucking brilliant tribute record to Jesse that's come out. It's called Silver Patron Saints, which is after a line off of one of his songs. And it's got fucking Bruce Springsteen on it. It's got like this version of one of his songs that has like the late Wayne Kramer playing guitar on it with Tom Morello and little Stevie Van Zandt on the same fucking track as Alison Mosshart singing like the most gnarly, straight up version of one of these songs off New York Before the War. And it's just the list of people who are on this record. I mean, you mentioned Giorgio Bordello, whatever the crap. I mean, what's that guy's name? It's
Eugene, right? Go-Go Bordello is the band, but yeah, it's Eugene. I don't know, Eugene Bordello something or other. Yeah.
Okay. They're on this record. They're on this tribute record. It's. I mean, the people who are on it. I mean, it's got Tommy Stinson and his daughter on it. Tommy Stinson from The Replacements and his grown daughter, who's a singer, doing one of the Jesse songs on it. It's got Counting Crows. It's got Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day on it, and it sort of puts me in like Alex Chilton was playing a show. Local musician in Memphis, it's left, right, and center. Alex Chilton made it to a record for that tribute show, and in the liner notes, this journalist was like, at some point during the proceedings, somebody told Alex, he was like, "You're playing this so good, it's like you're playing it for free." It's like when musicians are just playing their guts out for free, for one of their fellows, right, to elevate somebody that they care about. I mean, every single group that covers any of the songs on this record are just going for it. The whole Steady is on there covering one of his songs. I mean, it runs the gamut, and it's actually like a triple vinyl. There's so many people on it. I'm not into the vinyl thing lately. I've had my heart broken enough by that. Thank you. But I've been listening to it incessantly. And in addition, I've been stepping outside of just that kind of one of his records that I'm most. And there's this awesome kind of comp. Again, 20 different songs, that most of which I had heard except on the tribute. It's Glitter in the Gutter. And again, it's just one of those things I can just dial it up on my phone and go, wow, okay, I actually heard Bruce Springsteen's version of this on the tribute record, and now I'm actually hearing Jesse's version of it. And again, Bruce is actually up for like best rock vocal performance or something for a Grammy for being on that record, this Jesse Malin record. And so people are going to be like, who the fuck is Jesse Malin? But it's like, he's a guy who's had his song done by Bruce Springsteen. And 8 years ago, he recorded another song with Bruce Springsteen, just because Bruce Springsteen knows who the good writers are. So yeah, I've just been really, really listening a lot to that Silver Patron Saints LP, the tribute LP to Jesse Malin that's out there, as well as his, I guess, I don't know, a comp from about 5 years ago, Glitter in the Gutter, which kind of spans his career, his solo career prior to that, about 10 years worth of different recordings and so forth. So all the power to Jesse, quite frankly, and anybody who is putting themselves in precarious artistic enterprises with very little tangible rewards, such as fucking basic health insurance. I mean, God bless those who will. That's for sure. I wouldn't be doing it, but I'm glad somebody is. So yeah, man, that's my number 2/3, I suppose. What do you got for your next one, my man?
Okay, my next one, I guess I'll talk about the other new album that I've been listening to a bunch lately, and that is Chromacopia, the new album by Tyler the Creator. Who, yeah, like he's one of these artists that I've really kind of, I guess I just definitely wasn't into when he first came out. I'll admit it. And he was but like his past few albums especially have really grown on me a lot. And I mean, it's just kind of like you realize it's someone who's literally just kind of like grown up in front of people as an artist, and was like, started making albums when he was like a 19, 20-year-old edgelord, and kind of just, has still been practicing his craft this entire time, and, going through life experience, and isn't that same guy that put out Goblin, 15 years ago or whatever. But yeah, no, this new album, it kind of forms the third part of a trilogy, I guess, or I've seen it described as part of kind of a trilogy over his past 3 albums. His album Igor from, I can't remember how, I think it was sometime in the late 2010s. That was an album that a lot of the story of it was about like a particular kind of like relationship gone south that he had. And then his next album, Call Me When You Get Lost, that came out a couple years ago, was very much, that was like an emotional rebound kind of situation, like between just like, those kind of just the messy shit you get you get involved in after you go through a breakup, mixed with like literally a Greek chorus coming on and basically saying, we're having fun, right? Aren't we, guys? This is all a really good time. All these things we're doing to distract ourselves, like, in between the songs, in the form of like DJ drama, the like mixtape host showing up, just kind of being like, yeah, we're going down on the yacht this time. Sure, guys, we're eating ice cream. It's great out, isn't it? Meanwhile, talking about like, yeah, just this love triangle just all of his, just all the things that kind of like happen in these messy rebound situations. And Chromacopia, the new album, is kind of him like contemplating relationships with like, sort of the closest thing to a Greek chorus on this album is like, there's like, samples of like his mother basically giving him advice, kind of in between a few of the songs. And there's like just a lot of like reflections on like relationships with like family and like romantic relationships and that sort of thing. And just it's like the guy, like I said, the guy is definitely kind of, he's getting older, he's thinking about things. It kind of reminds me of like in one of my like just random moments where like I tend to like associate two seemingly unrelated pop culture things. It almost reminded me of like his version of like Stephen Sondheim's Company, which is a play about a guy who's basically a fuckboy, realizing that he doesn't really want to be a fuckboy anymore through being that single friend who gets invited over to like, things being hosted by his various coupled up friends, as the company in question. And that's one of, I don't know, that's like, I'm not a huge like theater guy, but that's, I've always enjoyed that Sondheim play. And it just kind of, that's almost what like the vibe of this album reminds me of sometimes. But also like he's probably one of the best hip hop producers right now. Like just in terms of like interesting, exciting, fun music, like you can see this album, I feel like there's a lot more, you can almost like, I hear a little more influence of like the Neptunes and stuff like that on this album in certain ways, where there's like, a song with like basically a whole fucking marching band behind it, and like that kind of stuff that just kind of that's what it reminds me of. But it's just like, and he's the fact that he's getting older and much like he's a really good rapper and like makes like really great, interesting, fun, catchy beats. And yeah, the album's kind of like a little more of like a self-reflective kind of thing. And it's like, it's one of the better hip hop albums I've heard this year. And no, it's really it's quite good. Tyler knocking another one out of the park. And like some of the songs even have kind of like psych rock kind of influences, and like you can like he can write like a catchy tune, when he wants to.
He's happy to bring in the eclecticism into
exactly
what his wheelhouse is, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like he's got collaborations with folks like Donald Glover and like Daniel Caesar and that too, who can handle that sort of more melodic end of things. And it's just it's one of the better like albums I've heard recently on like that hip hop end of the spectrum, and one of the newer things I've been enjoying a lot lately. So yeah, that was my third pick. So
fantastic. Well, again, part of what you described, it almost sounds like you guys kind of almost veering into like R&B kind of territory.
There is R&B. Definitely that influence there. Like there's definitely that in there, but it's not like, it's still kind of like weird off kilter, like kind of like, like I said, there's like I said, almost kind of like he uses like very kind of like 60s like psych rock guitars in some of the songs and stuff that like lend that kind of vibe to it. Yeah. Like, but it'll be like that mixed with like, I think like Zambian R&B samples, like all kind of like looped together. Like, it's a pretty cool album.
Bringing some disjuncture to your ear set or whatever. That's dope. Well, in terms of what I would say that I got left, I definitely want to kind of circle back to the hot water music tip if I can, just because concurrently with this tour, Vows, currently with this single / EP with Fritz, and we actually had out his first solo album in like 10 years. And he's got it out. It's sitting there, and he's probably been playing the songs on his solo tours, kind of that he does in between to my. It's just sitting out there in plain sight, and the hot water stuff. He's just getting so much attention, which is absolutely what it should be, because. But on the other side of it, I mean, you just have like this full-on record, Love and War, by Chuck Reagan, where it's like completely, it's not even the opposite. It's because it's part of the same cloth as the hardcore punk, a melodic punk kind of stuff that Bob was doing so well for 30 years. It's a case where it's like, okay, he's literally playing country music. He's literally playing folk music. He is literally engaging completely unashamedly and leaning into the just acoustic, full paradigm and just owning it. He's just got this, and so this is where it's like in Hot Water, he's like the gravel-throated, super intense singer guy, as well as, I assume, quite a good guitar player. You actually put him into his solo context where it's like, okay, you can actually say that all the arrangements and all the stuff pretty much originates with him. But it's like he's not even setting it up in terms of a second rock group. It's like it sounds so different in that it's like really thoughtful, up-tempo, upbeat, well arranged. Again, just acoustic, but still very much with drums and bass, keeping the tempo up kind of music. And he's got the female singer, kind of in a duet in some instances. He's got background vocals, those really kind of warm harmonies on the back. And if you actually look at the lyrical content, I mean, he's just singing about Chuck Reagan's stuff, like be dignified, work hard, the world can be a shitty place, but you're gonna keep your dignity. You're gonna work harder than the others. He's always really kind of just addressing you as being somebody that's got to just power through and do your best and be kind to your people and pay respect to your relationships. And really, you got to give credit to somebody who's just kind of putting out their vision for what it takes to be like a good person into words that are pretty unequivocal, pretty direct. I mean, he's smart, he's thoughtful. You're never going to go, okay, this guy writes the cleverest lyrics in the world. I mean, that's not what you're going to a Chuck Reagan record for. That's not what you're going to a hot water music record for. You're going there for feeling. You're going there for an emotion. You're going there for hard work, which leads to technical excellence. And there's technical excellence all over the record. There's not one aspect of it that isn't well considered and well thought out. And it doesn't even sound like stiff, it sounds like he had a lot of time. He could get the personnel he wanted to. Sounds like he wasn't in a rush. I don't know the background, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was one of those records that kind of shake finally kind of coming out. And again, if I just want something I could listen to in the nighttime, if I could listen to if I just have something that wants to speak to me outside of just my kind of typical rage rock kind of leanings, then I mean, goddamn, I'll just throw that on and just enjoy the hell out of it. Because his other solo records, particularly Old Country, which came out about 10, 12 years ago, there's Feast or Famine, another kind of record that was sort of contemporary. Like at one point he broke up with Hot Water Music. Hot Water Music formed a band without him called The Draft, which have reissued their one record that they did before they kind of went back off hiatus. It's just there's such a consistency across Hot Water's output over the decades, and actually in the solo efforts as well. I mean, you can see with something like Rumble Seat, which was a project that Waller put out with a couple of other folks, but mostly it was just the two principals from Hot Water playing just really stripped down folk music, and it was fucking lit. I remember getting a comp record, friggin' Rumble Seat is Dead, where they took all the recordings that they had and just kind of threw them out there. I think it's on No Idea. And I mean, goddamn, that was when I realized that these dudes, Wallard and Reagan, are not just your weekend warriors. They're not just your sort of, we're going to kind of get out these few records and then kind of just let it sit. They're people who are actually trying on all sides of the musical paradigm. And I know that as soon as you start saying paradigm, you're really just looking for a word that doesn't quite fit, which is probably true for me. But again, every time, it's like when Waller releases anything with Ship Thieves, automatically it has my fucking attention. So again, when Reagan and Chuck puts out a solo record, so well considered, so thoughtful, and with so much care behind it, it's just consistent with my impression of him as an artist. It's consistent with a fly fishing operation, for fuck's sake. He takes people out, and you can pay good money to go catch fish in Northern California on a boat with Chuck Reagan, and people do. I mean, he's an outdoors guy. He has his own brand of barbecue sauce. He has videos where he's sponsored on Instagram of doing barbecue shit, right? Just firing up the grill. And it's you lost me 2 steps into this. I don't care how good those jalapeno poppers are. I'm not doing that, but it's fucking rad that you are, right? So I just have so much respect and appreciation for Chuck Reagan as an artist and as somebody who's actually, it looks like they're kind of living in alignment with their values as an artist. And it just fucking sounds awesome too. So I guess I just got a lot of huge amount of respect for Chuck, and I just really love this new record, Love and More. So that's almost my last one. I got a couple of others that I would sort of throw in there, but they don't really quite go with this. So I'll give it over to you, Dan, to see if you got any more.
All right, I got one more thing I'll talk about here on the show, I guess. That is I guess it's a music related movie that I saw recently that I really enjoyed, that I figured, fit enough. It's music enough that I figured I could put it on a music show. And whatever. Anyways, I'm talking about the 2018 Finnish comedy Heavy Trip, which I had a chance to see recently and I really enjoyed. And
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it is it's about a metal band in a small town in Finland, and basically their journey to try and get on the bill of this big festival in Norway, even though their band doesn't have a name, and their singer's got terrible stage fright that as soon as he's in front of an audience, he starts projectile vomiting. And their drummer keeps choking on food while eating, and
are we talking Spinal Tap?
Being resuscitated. Yeah, it's very Spinal. It almost reminds me of Spinal Tap, but the thing that it reminded me of the most was I don't know if you're familiar with the director Bruce McDonald, the Canadian director. He did Hardcore Logo, but he also did he did a really great movie called Highway 61. That's just a really great rock and roll road trip kind of movie. But anyways, it's the way that it's just like these guys are from a small town, and they're always getting, one of them works at the local mental hospital, cleaning up, as a janitor, and they're always getting hassled by local dudes in hockey merch, who are just the local rednecks that don't like the metalheads and that kind of thing. But they have a few people that believe in them, and once a series of through a wacky series of events, they think that they might be on the bill of this big black metal festival in Norway. So it chronicles their journey to
or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but it's anyways, yeah, it's they end up deciding on the name Impaled Rectum. And writing their first songs and taking promo photos using the police speed trap camera, and it's just a fun movie about very niche metal. And yeah, I gotta look up what they refer to their genre as. The full description of the genre is
and I'm gonna die.
Pardon? No, they describe the band Impaled Rectum.
It sounds like Turbo Hero.
Oh well, it's just heavy death metal, black metal kind of stuff. But yeah, the band describes themselves as symphonic, post-apocalyptic, reindeer grinding, Christ abusing, extreme war, pagan, Fennoscandian metal. And
that sounds it.
They get inspired and they practice in a reindeer slaughterhouse that one of the guys' parents own. Yeah, and it's just a fun, silly, like I said, a very fun, silly comedy about very niche, extreme music made by people that definitely know it. And yeah, at one point they end up recruiting someone that the singer knows from work to fill in the band at a certain point, and there's some grave robbing involved, and yeah, it's some police chases, some SCA cosplayers. It's just a fun, I'll put a link. I'll definitely put the trailer at least, and a couple of clips in the show notes, just because it was definitely worth checking out. They actually made a sequel called Heavier Trip that came out this year, and I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but Heavy Trip is, you can watch it you can see it on if you go to Tubi. I don't know if you ever use Tubi.com. It's on there.
Yeah.
it's on YouTube, sort of free with ads, but like Tubi is also
Yeah,
free
yeah.
with ads. But it's like I said, it's in Finnish with English subtitles. And yeah, very much like I said, a movie made by people who know how to lovingly sort of mock the tropes of like a very specific genres. And yeah, I was very much into it. And yeah, I
Well,
would
that
recommend
sounds
checking it
lit.
out. Yeah.
Well, and in terms of my sort of final sort of offering here, um, I'm actually, so first of all, he's saying that the Jesus Lizard do have a new single out. It just dropped a couple days ago, and I mentioned before, like on the last episode, where Pack is out, the Jesus Lizard record, and my take on it, which I will maintain, is that I don't listen to the Jesus Lizard for songwriting. I don't. Like, their songwriting is awesome. Their songwriting is awesome, but they're a band who I am listening to primarily for their performance. And that's weird for me because when I really care about a band, I'm usually drawn in by the songwriting first, and then, the attitude, and then, the performance kind of runs sort of third or fourth in terms of what I even care about, in terms of how a band sort of puts itself forward. But this is a case where it's like, for sure, it's the attitude that I grab first, because how the fuck can there even be anyone like David Yao ever besides David Yao? There's nobody. You can't. To me, he operates in his completely own sphere. He's like, there's Yao like, and then there's the rest of everybody. I can't even think of anybody who does his particular thing as consistently and as well as he does. Again, like I love Paul Westerberg, I love Jesse Malin, I love like these folk like the Lawrence Arms. I mean, the Lawrence Arms are great for their song. Why I love them so much. I don't go to the Jesus Lizard, for their sharp observations on human nature or, geez, that's the label. I go there for like noise violence. I go there for just pummeling, like all, quirky fucking tempos, some math rock-ish kind of undercurrents, but just the music is designed to melt your face, in slow, methodical fucking fashion. And David Yao, I mean, again, I'm glad that he's taken singing lessons. I think it's great, from his standpoint. It's cool to be able to understand a few snatches of words here and there in the songs. But goddamn, I mean, that's secondary to my objective when I listen to them. I put them on when you were talking about that earlier band, right, with all the touch and go kind of influence stuff. You're talking Steve Albini, you're talking like Big Black, or any of those kind of really raw, nasty kind of touch and go stuff from mid 80s and on. I mean, that's the Jesus Lizard in a nutshell to me. And again, I'm there for the experience. I'm glad that somehow these dudes are in their mid 50s or even a bit older than that, and they're out embarking on a nationwide of America tour currently, right? They're about to go on it. I don't know if it's going into Christmas time or into next year or what. But again, I'm just so grateful that they've come out from where they were 25, 30 years ago, and they haven't missed a fucking step. Like, and so that's where I don't need to listen to their new single 25 or 30 times in a row to catch every little scrap of it that I can. I just say, okay, I'm going to add this to the whole wider body of their work. And there's going to come a day where I'm just going to listen to the Jesus Lizard straight for 2.5 days. And I'll and then I'll step away from it for a while. Like kind of, it's like getting a tattoo. It's just kind of like, I'm going to kind of go at this special, and I'm going to enjoy it as a singular kind of thing. It's not going to be the background music to my life. It's not going to be something that I just throw on my headphones to kind of power my way to work when I'm walking or whatever I kind of do puttering around. There's just, it's completely different than what I typically go to music for. But I can't deny that I am addicted to it. I cannot deny that I have such regard and care for it. I mean, again, it would really have to suck bad for me to not love it, actually, which is kind of, so they do got another single. They have a new single that's called "Cost of Living." Relatable, very 2020s. Trump's America and what the fuck. And then also, just kind of the last thing I'll sort of throw in here is that there's a new film out that I want to see. Haven't watched it. It's just really got public release right now, and it's the documentary Harley Flanagan, Wired for Chaos. Harley Flanagan being the sole sort of remaining dude from the Cro-Mags, legendary New York hardcore punk band, who they're still going. But Cro-Mags is like Harley Flanagan plus the three people he's playing with now is what it is. And I can't even tell you anybody else who's in the lineup. And if I'm being honest, I listened to that Age of Quarrel record of theirs from like 85 or 86 or 87 or whatever the fuck it was. And there's some good stuff on it. It really elevated the level of what New York hardcore was capable. The level of just it encapsulated a lot of cool, kind of contradictory elements of that scene, and just sort of put a thing on it, right? So, I mean, any of those friggin' bands, any of those New York hardcore bands, you have to trace it back in some way to a relationship with the Cro-Mags. Was there anything else you wanted to throw on here before we're finished up, my man?
I guess I'll save it for the notes mostly, but the one other thing I was going to mention was the other sort of classic album I've been listening to a fair bit lately,
okay.
And that is The Cure's album Disintegration from 1989. Just because they were one of those bands, you know how when you're younger, there's like, and you're first sort of getting into alternative music or whatever, there's those certain kind of like more accessible gateway bands that are like, they're still weird, they're still kind of like doing kind of interesting off-kilter shit, but they're just sort of like accessible enough to make it, be they do. That's just it. That kind of that was what inspired me to go back and revisit some of some of their older stuff. Just because, like that new album is out recently, and like it's pretty good. But like they were, like I said, they were a band that was like pretty foundational to me when I was younger. Because like the way that I look at it is like they were one of the bands that like they were weird and interesting and like quirky and moody and shit, but like you could also get their album, like I could borrow their albums from the public library in a pre-internet era, which was a criterion for me at the time, when I was still sort of like forming musical tastes. And yeah, that was an album that like, I just sort of like kind of hung on to. Like I didn't really stick with them too much past that in terms of like their career arc, but like it's just a great fucking album. And like for that kind of, it's funny because like, when you think of quote unquote goth, there's like 2 or 3 lanes it could be. And I feel like the Robert Smith iteration maybe isn't as much of a thing these days. But like, I mean, there's a reason why like the main character of the Sandman comics was like modeled after that guy. Like,
like literally the song, there's nothing me and Bobby Smith can do about this, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
The dude from Blink 182, the dudes from Blink 182, like there's pictures of them freaking the fuck out when they meet Robert Smith.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean,
it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could definitely hear that influence with them. And they were like, they had a run as like, a pretty, like they were like, an alternative band that crossed over into the mainstream, like pretty frequently for a while. Yeah, exactly. And, they still seem like pretty cool people, like, I guess that new album, the only advance announcement they made was they put a poster in the window of like the pub where they played their first show in their hometown, just saying like, hey, we're going to have a new album out on whatever date. And then everybody else kind of got it by surprise.
Wow. Dope. Well, that just sounds like a good way to go out, man. That's a positive vibe on, some tumultuous times, if I can put it out that
Exactly.
way. So
Some good
yeah, kind of guide you through these times of gloom and doom and seasonal shift or some such, right? Well, I'm stoked. I enjoyed that. Looking forward to the notes. Looking forward to moving on. And yeah, boys, oh boys, it's again. I said this for some reason. I felt compelled to say this during the episodes of the education show as well. But for the love of God, don't let shit get too depressing. Okay, just find your music. Go for your like easy peasy kind of feel good endorphins where you can. There's no shame or harm in reaching for your musical comfort food, in my opinion. So that's, I think, largely what we kind of got here. Musical comfort food.
Yeah, that's basically what I was aiming at with the topic this week.
Absolutely, well achieved. Well, I'm going to put a pin on it for my part, and I'm going to say thanks a lot for being here, everybody. Thanks for checking out any amount of time with us whatsoever, and looking forward to next time already. And I'm saying goodbye.
All right. See you around.
Catch you later, one and all.